The tassels hadn't even stopped swinging when my husband leaned close and whispered, smiling for the cameras, "I'm leaving you. After today, don't call me your husband." The applause was thunderous. My daughter beamed onstage. Inside me, something ancient and vicious woke up and went perfectly silent. I didn't cry. That was the first thing that confused him. His hand was still resting on my lower back, possessive, rehearsed, like the loving husband everyone believed he was. The man who funded the scholarships. The man who shook hands with the dean. The man who'd practiced this moment in his head while planning his exit. "Not here," I murmured, calm enough to scare myself. He chuckled under his breath. "You always knew this day would come?" Did I? The lights were blinding. Parents stood. Phones rose. My daughter's name echoed through the hall, and she walked across the stage in that blue gown I'd steamed at midnight, because she wanted it perfect. Perfect like the lie I'd been living. When she took her diploma, he let go of me, already gone. We posed for photos afterward. He wrapped an arm around our daughter, kissed her temple, then turned to me for the final shot. The one for social media. The final performance. "Smile," he said through clenched teeth. I did. That smile would cost him everything. At the reception, he disappeared with his colleagues. I stayed by the refreshment table, hands folded, listening to congratulations rain down like confetti meant for someone else's life. My daughter hugged me, smelling like perfume and youth and hope. "Mom? Where's Dad?" she asked. I watched him across the room, laughing too loudly with a woman in a white blazer. "Younger, of course, he's busy being important," I said softly. "As usual." As usual. He cornered me near the exit an hour later, irritation cracking through his polished calm. "I'll move my things out tomorrow," he said. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. This doesn't have to be ugly." Ugly. The word almost made me laugh. "I want the house," he continued, voice low. "You can keep your little art studio. I'll be generous. With what I built. With what I hid." I nodded. "Okay." That stopped him. "Okay?" His eyes narrowed. "That's it." Yes, I met his gaze, empty, obedient, the woman he'd trained me to be. "It's your day too." He searched my face. Suspicious now, men like him preferred tears, begging. Drama. My silence unsettled him. "Good," he said finally. "I knew you'd understand." He turned to leave. I spoke just loud enough. "Don't forget your speech tonight." He froze, slowly turned back. "What speech?" "The one you rehearsed for the board dinner," I said. "The one about integrity." His jaw tightened. "What are you talking again? Smaller this time? Sharper?" "Nothing," I said. "Congratulations. You're free?" That night, alone in the house he thought he'd won, I poured a glass of wine and unlocked a drawer he'd never bothered to open. Inside, contracts, USB drives, burner phones, and a thin black notebook with dates written in red ink. I'd started keeping records years ago. Not because I planned revenge, but because silence teaches you patterns. And patterns become weapons. I opened my laptop. The screen lit my face like a confession booth. Subject line, regarding tomorrow's vota. I didn't send it yet. Patience first. At midnight, my phone buzzed. Why are there reporters asking about my offshore accounts? I stared at the message, calm as a surgeon. Across the city. At a hotel he thought was discreet, my husband began to scream. And that was only the beginning. He stayed in that chair long after the light outside shifted from gold to ash. I moved around him, packing my own things now. Not because I had to, but because I wanted him to feel the imbalance. Every drawer I opened sounded too loud. Every zipper felt like punctuation. "You're enjoying this," he muttered. Looked at him. "No?" I said. "I'm finishing it." He laughed weakly. "You think this ends with money, with headlines?" I didn't answer. Answers give people hope. The next morning I walked into my art studio. The little hobby room he'd let me keep, and locked the door. I pulled canvases off the wall, revealing the safe recessed behind them. Inside, hard drives labeled in my handwriting. Dames. Cities, the geography of his lies. I uploaded the final packet to a secure server and scheduled it. Not public. Selective. By afternoon, his former mentor resigned, for personal reasons. By evening, a man I'd never met wired 7 figures into a charity I'd quietly founded years ago under a different name. He didn't even negotiate. Fear makes men generous. My daughter noticed the tension that night. She always had been observant, a trait she inherited from me, not him. "Mom," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "What's going on?" I brushed her hair back the way I used to when she was small. "Adult things." She frowned. "Dad's been texting me weird stuff. Apologies. Promises. He never apologizes." I chose my words carefully. People apologize when they're afraid of losing the story they tell themselves. She studied me, searching. "Are you okay?" I kissed her forehead. "I will be." That was the truth. He didn't sleep. I knew because he emailed at 30:06 a.m. long, rambling paragraphs, half threats, half pleas. At 40:12 he switched tactics, sent photos, vacations. "Birthday's our wedding. Nostalgia is a coward's weapon." At 60:00 he showed up again. This time he didn't knock. He dropped to his knees in the foyer, the marble cold against his palms. The man who'd once corrected waiters' posture was begging on my floor. "I'll sign everything over," he said. "The house, the accounts. Just make it stop." I looked down at him, not with hatred, but with clarity. "You already gave me everything," I said. "You just didn't notice when." He grabbed my ankle. I stepped back. "Don't," I warned quietly. He flinched. "Let go." "I built this," he whispered, gesturing wildly. "My name? My life?" "No," I said. "You rented it. I paid the deposit." I handed him an envelope, inside a single page. "Every affair, every transfer, every lie, key minimal, deadly." "You forgot something?" I said. "I was the one who organized your life. Your calendars. Your flights. Your passwords." His mouth opened, closed. "I knew where you were supposed to be," I continued. "So I noticed when you weren't." He folded in on himself. That afternoon, the indictment dropped. Not his, yet. But close enough. He was escorted out of his office building by security he used to tip with condescension. Someone filmed it. The clip didn't go viral. It didn't need to. It circulated exactly where it was meant to. He called me screaming. "You promised nothing," he shouted. "You said you wouldn't go public." "I didn't," I said. "Others did." Ooh, I thought of the women he'd dismissed. The partners he'd cheated. The men who'd waited years for a crack in his armor. "Gravity," I said and hung up. The divorce proceedings were swift. Surgical, he tried to stall. His lawyers tried to intimidate. Every motion they filed was answered before it landed. I watched him across the courtroom, smaller now, suit hanging wrong, eyes darting. He wouldn't meet my gaze. The judge did. She read the filings. The amendments, the evidence. She didn't look surprised. When she ruled, the gavel sounded like a door locking. Outside he finally found his voice again. "You ruined me," he spat. I leaned in so only he could hear. "No, I survived you." He laughed bitterly. "You think this makes you powerful." I straightened. "I think it makes me free." Weeks passed. The house sold. I kept the art studio, expanded it, actually. Sunlight flooded the space now that nothing was hidden. My daughter moved into her apartment. She flourished. He faded. But he wasn't done trying. One night, he broke into my email, or thought he did. Left a message meant to scare me. Threats, names. Promises of retaliation. I forwarded it, not to police, to his probation officer. The call I got afterward was short. "You planned this," he said, voice shaking with rage and something like awe. I replied. "For years." Silence. "Why wait?" he asked finally. I looked out at the city, at the lights blinking like witnesses. "Because," I said, "revenge is louder when it's calm." I hung up and blocked his number. The next morning, I stood alone in the empty house one last time. The echo didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. On the wall, I hung a single new canvas, blank white, waiting. I picked up a brush. And somewhere far away, a man who thought humiliation was my breaking point, finally understood the sound he'd heard that day at graduation wasn't applause. It was the countdown. And I was still counting. The house sold in 3 days. Cash, no contingencies. The buyer never met me, only my attorney, and that felt right. Some spaces are meant to be exited without ceremony. I moved into a quiet place overlooking the water. Glass walls. Clean lines. No echoes of old arguments baked into the corners. The kind of silence that doesn't ask permission. That's when he started unraveling publicly. Not in headlines, in whispers. Former allies distancing themselves. Invitations rescinded. a foundation quietly removing his name from a plaque at midnight. He tried to rebrand, new haircut. Softer interviews, carefully worded apologies about personal failings. He even cried once, on camera. It would have worked. For someone else. But I'd already placed the seeds. A week later, a junior analyst testified. Then another, then a woman he'd silenced with a settlement broke it, legally, surgically. Because the clause he relied on had been invalidated by a technicality I'd noticed years ago and waited to use. Waiting turns knowledge into leverage. He showed up at my new place unannounced. Security buzzed me. "Do you want to see him?" the guard asked. I watched the monitor. He looked older, smaller. Like gravity had increased around him alone. "Yes," I said. 5 minutes. He stepped inside, eyes scanning, searching for remnants of the woman he remembered. There were none. "You're hiding," he accused weakly. "I'm living," I replied. He paced, agitation twitching through him. "You think you won. But you didn't take everything." I poured tea. Let him talk. "There are things you don't know," he said. "People who won't let this go." I finally looked at him. "You're confusing mystery with relevance?" His mouth tightened. "No," I said. "I'm precise." He stopped pacing. "I loved you." The lie was almost convincing, almost. "You loved how I made you look," I said. "There's a difference." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "You humiliated me." I met his eyes without blinking. "You did that yourself. I just stopped catching you when you fell." He laughed, sudden and sharp. "You think you're untouchable now." I smiled, that smile again. The one he never learned to read. "I think you are?" He left angry. That was fine. Anger makes people careless. 3 days later, I attended a benefit gala under a name he didn't recognize. I wore black, minimal, invisible in a room full of egos. He was there. Not invited, tolerated. A man lingering at the edges of his former world, smiling too hard. When he spotted me, recognition flickered, then doubt. He wasn't sure anymore. I'd changed my hair, my posture. Power rearranges the body. I listened as donors murmured. As someone asked him casually if the investigation was still ongoing. "Yes," he said too quickly. "But I'm confident." Confidence is loud when it's fake. I slipped an envelope to the event coordinator on my way out. No return address. Inside, documents tying a shell company to a senator's brother. By morning, the story shifted. He wasn't a fallen man anymore. He was a liability, he called. I didn't answer, he texted. "I know it's you. See." I blocked the number. My daughter came over that weekend. She stood at the window looking out at the water. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am." She hesitated. I kept my voice steady. "What do you want?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Keeps saying he made mistakes." Mistakes. Plural. As if numbered errors could add up to absolution. "You don't owe him access to your healing," I said. "But whatever you choose, I trust you." She nodded. "Hug me." That night, I slept deeply. Dreamless. That alone felt like victory. Then came the last move, not mine. He filed a civil suit, frivolous, desperate, accusing me of manipulation, coercion, emotional abuse. His lawyers hoped for noise, confusion, something to muddy the water. I read the filing once. Then I smiled. Because buried in his claims was an admission he didn't realize he'd made. A date, a transfer, a signature. Contradicting sworn testimony from 6 months earlier. Perjury doesn't forgive desperation. I forwarded the discrepancy to my attorney with one line. Proceed press. The hearing was quiet, short. When the judge dismissed the case and referred it for review, his shoulders sagged like strings cut. Outside the courthouse, he finally broke. "Why won't you stop?" he shouted, voice cracking in front of cameras. I stepped close enough for the microphones to miss. "I did stop," I said. "A long time ago." "You're just late." His face contorted, rage, grief, recognition. "You waited," he whispered. "Yes." "For what?" "For you to believe you were safe." He staggered back. That was the moment he screamed. Not words. Just sound, raw. Animal. The noise of a man realizing the ground had been gone for years, and he'd only just looked down. I turned away. Behind me, flashes popped. Reporters shouted. His world collapsed in slow motion. Ahead of me, the steps were sunlit. I walked down them without looking back. The water outside my window that evening was perfectly still. I poured a glass of wine. Opened my laptop. There were messages waiting, offers, invitations, quiet acknowledgments from people who now knew exactly who I was. I closed them all. Power isn't in being seen. It's in choosing when not to be. I picked up my brush and added the first stroke to the blank canvas. Clean. Intentional. Somewhere, a man who announced his exit at a graduation finally understood something far too late. I never needed to raise my voice. I just needed time. And I still had plenty. The news cycle moved on. It always does. But consequences don't need headlines to breathe. Months later, I stood in the same auditorium where it had begun, empty now. Lights dimmed, chairs stacked like memories no one wanted to sit with. My daughter had invited me back for a private alumni event. Different life. Different gravity. I stood where we'd once stood together. I remembered the way his voice had cut through applause. The way he thought timing would protect him. The way he mistook a public moment for power. I closed my eyes. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I didn't turn right away. I already knew. He sounded hoarse when he spoke. "You look well." I faced him slowly. He wasn't screaming now. Wasn't posturing. Wasn't anyone important at all. Just a man hollowed out by his own certainty. "They let me come," he said. "As a guest?" I nodded. "That's generous of them." He swallowed. "I lost everything." "No," I said calmly. "You lost control, there's a difference." His hands trembled. "I wake up every night hearing it?" "Hearing what?" "That silence," he whispered. "The moment you didn't break." I studied him, really looked, and felt nothing sharp, no anger, no triumph, just distance. "You mistook my quiet for weakness?" I said. "That was your last mistake." He took a step closer. "Did you ever love me?" I answered honestly. "I loved the version of you that never existed." That landed harder than any insult. The announcement lights flickered on stage, time to clear the hall. He nodded once, like a man finally understanding the rules of a game he'd already lost. As he walked away, shoulders bent, I didn't watch. I walked forward. Outside, the night was cool, clean. The future wide open and unafraid of me. My phone buzzed, a message from my daughter. "Cash, proud of you." I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I was done. And somewhere, far behind me, a man who once tried to humiliate me in public would spend the rest of his life explaining a single unanswered question. How the woman he underestimated never had to raise her voice. Oh, to end him.